Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're exploring something that is, quite honestly, truly transformative. We're diving deep into a neuro-affirming healing model known as the Five Good Things Expressive Framework, or 5GTEF for short. If conventional mental health approaches have ever felt to you like they're just missing a certain dynamic spark, well, this might completely change how you view the entire healing process.
Okay, let's dive into this. What actually happens when words simply aren't enough to heal? For decades, standard psychology has relied heavily on verbal processing. You know the drill. Basically, two chairs, a lot of nodding, and a whole lot of talking. But here's the fundamental problem. Not everyone processes their internal world through spoken language. Relying solely on verbal articulation can deeply alienate neurodivergent individuals, like those with autism or ADHD, and it can be incredibly limiting for trauma survivors, who often find that their lived experiences quite literally sit just beyond the reach of words.
So traditional talk therapy is super verbally dominant, right? And it's fundamentally rooted in individual coping, this idea that you need to self-regulate and heal all on your own. But 5GTF offers a total paradigm shift. It's a multimodal approach. We're talking art, movement, and mindfulness. It makes the bold argument that we don't heal in isolation, we heal together. We are shifting away from the expectation that you must talk your way to health to a totally new model where we creatively engage our way to true, authentic connection.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking beyond traditional talk therapy. Then we'll meet the 5GTEF model itself, break down those five good things, explore some real-world applications, and finally wrap up with ethics and inclusive healing.
Section 1. Beyond traditional talk therapy. The limits of autonomy. For a very long time, psychological frameworks defined individual autonomy, basically being entirely self-sufficient, as the ultimate hallmark of health. But that framework leaves a lot of people behind. To really move past those limits, we have to understand the foundation of today's topic, relational cultural theory, or RCT. Emerging in the 1970s as a feminist-informed response to traditional psychology, RCT completely reframes how we grow. It asserts that humans actually thrive through mutual empathy and authenticity in relationships, not just individual autonomy. So it shifts clinical psychology completely away from that lone wolf model of healing. We are literally wired for connection, and it's within growth-fostering relationships that true transformation happens.
Section 2. Meet the 5GTF model, a creative practice.
So how do we actually take these beautiful but somewhat abstract concepts of relational cultural theory and turn them into a tangible creative practice that you can actually use in a room with people? And this brilliantly illustrates how the pieces fit together. Right at the very center, functioning as the heartbeat of it all, are the five good things: zest, clarity, worth, productivity, and connection. Now take a look at the outer rings. These central outcomes are firmly supported by expressive arts and mindfulness practices. This means we aren't just sitting around talking about achieving connection or clarity. We are actively cultivating them through creative engagement and mindful relational depth. To make this happen in practice, the model uses a highly predictable four-phase sequence. First up, stabilize. This is where brief mindfulness practices like grounding or breath awareness come into play. Second, create. This is the expressive arts activity itself. Visuals, movement, music, you name it. Third, integrate. Here we step back and reflect on the symbolic meaning of what was just made. And finally, fourth, close, which uses a ritual to reinforce that feeling of connection. Notice a pattern here? Sensory-safe mindfulness always precedes creative exploration. You absolutely must regulate the nervous system's arousal before you can safely dive into deep, vulnerable creative work.
Section 3. The five good things. Brain-changing pillars.
Let's look at the actual pillars of this model. It is incredible to see how these abstract psychological goals instantly become tangible, real-world activities. Take zest, for example, renewed vitality. How do we get that? Through playful painting or rhythm-based drumming, paired with energizing breathwork. Needs clarity? You turn to reflective journaling and a grounding meditation. To build a sense of worth, we use collaborative art and loving kindness practices. Productivity is fostered through vision boards and intention setting. And connection is deepened through group murals and synchronized breathing. Do you see how every single relational outcome has a direct, creative, and mindful pathway? So the crucial point is that this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good exercise. It is rooted in hard neuroscience. When you engage multiple sensory channels to externalize complex emotions, incredible things happen in your brain. Art making actually stimulates the reward pathways associated with dopamine release. Think about that deeply satisfying rush you get when you finally finish a creative project. That's literally your brain rewarding you. Using expressive methods enhances neuroplasticity and emotional processing. And when you add mindfulness to the mix, structural brain changes occur. It actually increases gray matter density in the regions linked to attention, executive functioning, and memory. No way, right? It's amazing.
Section 4. Real-world applications. Theory in action.
It is one thing to look at brain scans and theoretical models, but let's ground this in real human stories to demonstrate exactly what this looks like in action. Take the case of Sarah, a 32-year-old autistic woman. She originally sought help for social anxiety, but traditional talk-based approaches just left her feeling completely misunderstood and frankly alienated. Using the 5GTEF, her therapist shifted gears entirely. Instead of demanding verbal articulation, they introduced collaborative art making focused on themes of safety. Together, they created a mixed media collage. Brief mindfulness exercises kept Sarah regulated, and the creative collaboration built deep, implicit trust. Through this multimodal process, Sarah found her voice, a sense of safety, and personal agency, eventually reporting much greater self-confidence in her daily life.
Let's move to and see how this builds across completely different environments. This framework isn't just for clinical therapy. It works powerfully in organizational and educational settings too. For instance, in a graduate counseling classroom, a student named Jason was really struggling with countertransference. By engaging in movement-based art and contributing to a collaborative mural, he gained incredible emotional insight and built empathy with his peers in a way a standard textbook never could. Or take a clinical supervision group, where Maria used textured paper and clay to externalize her feelings of being totally overwhelmed. Doing that allowed her to clearly identify her challenges with setting boundaries. Both practitioners gained profound emotional awareness without relying solely on words.
Section 5. Ethics and inclusive healing, the bedrock of practice. As we wrap up our explainer today, we have to look at the ethical imperatives that hold this all together. In this framework, accessibility and cultural integrity aren't just afterthoughts, they are the absolute bedrock. This quote here represents a massive paradigm shift. Neurodiversity inclusion functions as a foundational principle rather than a later stage accommodation. So often in traditional settings, an environment is built strictly for neurotypical individuals, and then awkward, clunky accommodations are shoehorned in later. The 5GTEF flips that script entirely. It intentionally honors diverse sensory needs, flexible pacing, and multiple entry points right from day one.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how moving beyond talk therapy introduces a totally unique set of ethical responsibilities. Because this model champions expressive practices that often transcend Western psychological norms, think things like indigenous storytelling or rhythmic drumming, you absolutely must collaborate with cultural leaders to avoid appropriation. Furthermore, informed consent can't just be signing a standard form anymore. It has to explicitly address sensory sensitivities and pacing. And if a group creates a mural or a deeply personal collage together, you have to co-create explicit agreements about who actually owns that artifact and how privacy is maintained. Accessibility here isn't just a nice idea, it is a strict ethical obligation.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the history and the core model to the fascinating neuroscience, real-world stories, and the essential ethics of this incredible framework. But before we go, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to carry with you. If healing is inherently relational, how might we grow if we finally moved beyond words and started creating together? Think about how you might apply these 5 good things in your own life, your workplace, or your personal relationships. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.